Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co, and today I'm reviewing The Gang from Cosmos. The Gang is a 3 to 6 player game of playing poker cooperatively. And if you're like, how do you play poker cooperatively? Well, like this. In the game, the general goal of the game is across 3 to 5 rounds of play, you're playing until you either get caught 3 times, that's going to be involving flipping these cards over every time you get caught, or alternatively, until you raid 3 bank vaults. Whichever happens first, that's going to determine if you win or lose the game. So basically, if you win right away or lose right away, that would be 3 rounds of immediate losses or wins, or alternatively, you just go until you get to 3 first. So 3 to 5 rounds of play. So what is it you're doing in these rounds? How do you successfully heist the bank or successfully accomplish your heist or alternatively get caught? Well, you're playing through poker hands. You're trying to basically communicate the confidence you have of your poker hand to the other players. The way you do that is I'm going to only go ahead and look at my poker hand right now, and I'm going to say, oh, I have a 4 and a 10. Specifically a 4 and a 10 of diamonds, which means I also have the possibility of a flush. So because I have that, I don't have a lot, but if a flush does come out, I'm slightly higher. I'm going to go ahead and take this 2 over here. The problem is all the other players are like, no, I'm going to take a 1, and I'm going to go ahead and take a, well, there's a 1. Sorry, wrong hand. We do this the wrong way. We specifically take these chips over here, put them into the middle, and you sit there and try to decide who should take what. I took the 2, so that's what I'm taking, but someone else is like, no, I want to immediately take the 1. The other players are like, no, I want the 1, so I sit there and relinquish my 2 reluctantly to the middle, and I take a 3 instead. Someone takes the 2, everyone refuses to take the 4, so finally I eventually cave and put my 3 back in the middle, I take the 4, and someone else takes the 3, and there you go. Now, if you're like, what in the world just happened here? That makes sense. There's no reason you should know what just happened. But the idea of the game right now is you're starting to determine your confidence level in winning. And that's going to start with you sitting there saying, well, I have a 4 and a 10. It's not a great pair hand. It's not even like a high pair. It's not even like a king and ace, whatever it is. It's not a sequence, so I can't get a straight. The only thing I'm really banking on that's better than anyone else would be that I have 2 of the same suit, so I have a slightly higher chance of getting a flush. To me, that's a 2. The problem is everyone's refusal to take a higher number. Nobody wanted to take the 4. No one was confident, so I'm like, I don't know how confident or not confident they are, but I'll go ahead and take the 4. I'm guessing maybe I have the best poker hand. Not because I actually think I do, but because they are all certain that they don't. This will make more sense in a second. Then you go ahead and you reveal the flop. So you go ahead, you place out 1, and you place out 2, and you place out 3, and my confidence level tanks like a... What tanks really quickly? Like a hot air balloon that was immediately filled with lead. My confidence level tanks like a hot air balloon that was immediately filled with lead. Because suddenly my flush is gone. Now I just have a 4 and a 10. I got nothing on the board, so I immediately, with these new tokens that are out for the next round, we have the 1s and the 2s, you can see on the edge over there, I immediately take the 1 and I refuse to budge. Other players are like, no, I need the 1. And I'm like, I don't care. I'm not giving up the 1 because I don't know what you have, but I have nothing. Now, you can't actually say anything about your hand. You can't say what you do or don't have. You can just illustrate your confidence level in your score. Meanwhile, on the other hand, we immediately see someone else jump straight to a 4 over here. Now, I don't know what that means, but maybe that means he has a bunch of hearts in his hands. By the way, I should note this game is going to be slightly more confusing when we get to the end of it, and these hands don't necessarily make sense because I don't know what they actually have. But anyways, right now over here, maybe I'm sitting here looking at this, and I'm like, if they just pulled that off, one of 2 things happens. They either, oh, maybe they have a 4. They could have a 4 and a 2. That would be like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh my gosh, if they took the 4, they could have a straight, or they have hearts, but they might already have something. The players sheepishly go ahead and take their cards. You go ahead and reveal another card over here, and you see what goes on. Let's go ahead and put the next set of tokens out. Ooh, we have a 4. I'm back in the game, baby. I'm going to go ahead and jump back up to a 2. Nothing crazy, mind you, but I'm willing to say that a pair is something. This player is still insists on grabbing the 1 over here. This player is actually a little less certain. They go ahead and pull that over there. And if you're wondering why did they do that, well, right now we have a 3, 4, 5, 6. And so let's go ahead and have this player take that. And maybe they did, maybe they didn't. Again, you'll have some back and forth maneuvering as the game goes on. But just judging from my own point of view, watching this, I'm wondering, well, if we have this current flop right now, if they went from an immediate 4 to a hesitant 3, that might mean that they did indeed have a 4 and a 2, and they're judging that because a 4 and a 2 would have been a straight, which would have been an immediate 4 before, but now, if anyone else has a 7 would now beat this. So a single 7 would now beat his straight from last round, which is why he dropped down to a 3. We're going to go ahead and reveal the last card, and then we'll see what happens. We have there we go. We have a pocket pair, not pocket pair, a pair of 5s over on the table. Everyone's going to have those 5s. And suddenly, we see this player who took the 4 last round, they double down that 4. They're like, nope, I got this 4 over here. And this player goes ahead and still takes a 3. They're still fine over there. I'm still going to take my 2, and this player's still going to take their 1. This is when you go ahead and reveal their hands. Now, before I reveal their hands, I should note the nature of me trying to walk through how I would approach this game from what I'm seeing means that I did this without their hands actually mattering. So what you see now is kind of be anticlimactic. We go to reveal, and we have a whole 6s in the holes. Okay, great, 6 in the holes. We have over here, they have a 3. They probably should have won. We have a full house over here, 6s and 5s, oh my gosh. We have queens and 2s, this is a terrible hand, don't know why they did that. I have my 4 and my 10 over here, and this player has a 4 and a king, so they would arguably even beat me, but again, they got nothing much going on. Now, again, ignore that for a second, because this wouldn't have actually played out that way. But what happens in the final hand is you want your final hand to match the order of the chips. The person who played this chip to have the worst hand, second worst hand, third worst hand, fourth worst hand. If that order is not true, you immediately flip this over and you've triggered an alarm. If that order is true, you immediately accomplished your heist. The basic idea is the first 3 rounds of play are not there to actually matter. They are there to set the tone so that players can start reading into what other players have done as they go through it. You're trying to read through that process of, well, if you did this and I did this, if I was confident here and now I'm no longer confident, if you're no longer confident there and you suddenly got confident, what does that mean? What does that mean that I should infer from the hands on the table to how you played the game? So it's all about trying to read the progression of confidence of the players in order to make sure your final hand is actually correct through the knowledge you've been able to sort of deduce along the way. And then do that, 3 to 5 times until you win or lose. Now, once you've done that a few times, you can start adding in other cards. You have these, I can't remember the name of them over here, but you have 2 different sets of decks of cards. You have challenges and specialists, I believe it is. And the challenge and specialist, the way this works is when you can add these to the game, and after your first round, let's say you lost your first round, well, then you're going to go ahead and go into your challenges deck and add a new challenge to the game. And these are in progression over here. There's a set of progression. There's an order to them, although the order is just so you can experience them all. Once you have gone through them all, you just shuffle them up. But right now, we have quick access. Immediately after dealing pocket cards, do not distribute white chips. Immediately move on to round 2 and reveal the first 3 community cards, meaning effectively this card removes our first round of information from the game, so it makes it a little hard. But then if we win this, if we go ahead and we win the round successfully, we now reveal a specialist, and this gets tucked underneath the game, underneath the deck, and you have a new specialist in play. One of you gets to show the other player one of your pocket cards. That can be really helpful as an ability to be able to use when you're sure you should have the 3, I'm sure I should have the 3, neither one of us is budging, I'm like, you take the 4, you're like, you take the 4, well then if I show you my cards, maybe you're like, okay, fine, I'll take the 4 after all. So you have that kind of information where you get these specialists who will help you in the game, and again, depending on how the round goes, you'll tuck it underneath and then take a specialist or a challenge and play. There are additional various modes as far as making the game more advanced, giving you multiple challenges and things to go through, but that's the basic idea of the game. You have a basic structure, you have the specialists and the challenges to mix things up, and then you have difficulty modes as well to make the game even more difficult as you go. And that is how you play the gang. Which brings us to review, starting off with ease of play. Ease of play is very simple. You can get people up and running. This is not a game you need to teach. This is a game where I can literally deal your cards and just have you start playing. I could literally have you start playing. It's that kind of accessibility to it. Plus, of course, it's poker hands, which makes it very familiar. You really don't have to teach a lot, and honestly, leave the specialists and challenges out of your first game. There's no reason to introduce them until at least game 2. You could possibly wait longer, but honestly, game 2 is probably a fine time to introduce them to give that additional flavor to the game and make it not feel like it's literally just a deck of cards, because until then, it's basically just a deck of cards, plus some ordering chips, which you can use anything for. So, I mean, if you like this game enough, you could probably watch this review again, learn how to play again, and then play this with a deck of cards and a few notes. That would be enough to play the game. Unless you want specialists and challenges, then you'd need this game over here. As far as what I like, don't like, and can see others not liking, starting off with what I like, which is the cooperative feeling like a team nature. I like that in games in general. I like cooperative games to begin with, but I like it when a cooperative game really forces you to engage with each other, and especially a game that can't possibly have an alpha player. Like, this isn't a game where you're like making decisions as a team where one player could be making them on their own. This is inherently all about the dynamic you have at the table, the dynamic of the way the players are interacting with each other, the way they're conveying information, or the way they're confident or not confident, and reading into all of that as a team trying to deduce what's going on. Having players be able to make judgment calls as to, oh, because you can never reveal your own hand, but you could make inferences about other players' hands. You're like, oh, well, maybe they have a 7 over there because they suddenly got confident, and once that 4 came out, that's basically a guaranteed straight. Anyone who has a 7 has a decent chance of winning the hand. So that real degree of cooperative feeling, that deduction going on around the table, although to be fair, that deduction can have a drop of alpha playering in it, but the deduction going on the table, the slow evolution of watching your confidence change. There's something entertaining about that too, by the way. Watching the level of these chips. As somebody starts off in round 2 being confident that they're going to win, and suddenly they drop it down, they're like, I no longer have the best hand. That iteration and progression and history that the game develops as you go is incredibly satisfying to experience. Trying to read information based on those confidence levels is very satisfying. The gateway nature of the game is another huge plus. This is basically poker. Anyone who has played poker can sit down and play this game. There's so little rules overhead to actually add to the experience. You're like, hey, you've played poker, right? Or you at least know poker hands. And if you don't know poker hands, here, we got a player aid card for you that will teach you poker hands. And then suddenly, now it's just about guessing how good you think your hand would be, which is what you do when you play poker. That's how you start betting. You're illustrating your confidence levels. But now you're doing so not with a winner, but with a collective team win. And then the challenges and the specialists for variety, that's another nice twist over there to give you just something else to make it feel like it's not just a deck of cards. And so I appreciate that being added in, the variable nature that it adds to the game. As far as what I don't like in the game, first of all, ultimately it's poker, which is not my favorite game. I don't think against poker, it's not a game I have a particularly strong affinity to, and this game ultimately is about dealing poker hands. I'll also say the theme and art don't do it for me, and then the feeling that there's mostly just a deck of cards over here with a little bit thrown onto it, combined with the theme and the art not appealing for me. As much as I like the game, I'm kind of like, I want a rethemed version of it so I can actually get behind and be excited about this. Like, going on a bank heist with this doesn't do it for me. Put me in Middle Earth with a bunch of warriors, mages, and wizards, and the same exact game, and suddenly I feel like I'm here to play. But these look like ordinary cards. Like, Cosmos, why couldn't you have taken this great game concept and at least made it all fantasy races and dragons? Which I'm hearing myself right now. I am hearing myself because I'm like, on the one hand, this game is super accessible and super gateway friendly because it's just a deck of cards and it's poker. And on the other hand, let's draw wizards and mages and elves and goblins on these cards to make it seem like you're playing a really geeky game. So I am hearing myself on this. Cosmos, now that you've made this game, and now that it exists for those who want to bring into the fold, can you now make a fantasy version of the game? Because I'd be all over that for my own gaming collection. Because it just feels like a waste to have a game that's basically a deck of cards, and they use basically a deck of cards. Thematic, perhaps, but I want it to be cool and more interesting. As far as I can see others not liking, there is the luck of the flop aspect. Although luck of flop is interesting here because you are trying to read through the player's hand, so the luck of the flop at the end of it doesn't actually matter significantly because ultimately you're still going with your best bet of how things are going to play out, but there's still the uncertainty of like what could have happened, what's the least likely or the most likely aspect of things. And I will say, playing with the wrong group won't be fun. If you're playing with a game that doesn't have that mental mind meld, that isn't able to infer from what players are doing, if I'm not able to read the fact that you were confident that you're not, or if I'm overly confident, or if that one player at the table is always sure that he has the best hand and you flip things at the end and you're like, you had nothing. You had nothing. Why were you ever confident? Like, a player who doesn't understand how confident they should be can definitely make the experience possibly amusing and possibly less fun. Kind of depends on your game group. So I do think this is a game that is very group dependent as you play through it. As far as final thoughts on the gang, ultimately, here's the tricky part. Okay, I'll tell you where I am with this one. If this had a cool theme that I was totally behind, this would easily be a 4 to 5 for me. It would be a 4 to 5 because I think the game is excellent. I think it gives you poker with a cooperative twist. I think it gives you a slow degree of decision making and inferring progression and all that stuff. It just makes for a fun cooperative game that feels like it builds off of concepts we've seen before, but in a totally different way and a totally different core structure to it that makes it a great game. And so it would be a 4 to 5. I am going to give it a 3.5 out of 5, and that really is, I feel bad saying it because I don't know, it is, but it is what it is. This is the reality of how I feel about the game. The theme on it does not make me want to play the game. I have to remind myself that I have a fun time every time I play it, and then I can sit down and table it. But the theme does not pull me in. It is so anticlimactic for me that it literally does lower my rating for it. Throw some great art in this, make this a very cool looking game, and I would be a 4 out of 5 on this one. As it currently stands, it's a 3.5 out of 5. And if you're like, the theme shouldn't matter, great. Call it a 4 to 5 in your own head because that's what I would give it with the right theme. That's where we are. We have a 3.5 out of 5 that could easily become a 4 to 5. It might sound petty. It's still the way I feel. And as far as other game recommendations, first of all, we have The Crew. This game definitely has some vibes of The Crew to it because the very nature of the team kind of element, taking a classic concept trick taking and then making cooperative, taking a classic concept poker and then making a cooperative, definitely has aspects there. And if you want to see another game that has done poker fairly well, for me, I really enjoy Ruthless. There's not a lot of games that do poker on its own. There's lots of games that do Yahtzee, which does have similar poker hands to it. But check out Ruthless. I think it does a great job implementing poker into a game in a way that really doesn't make it feel like it's just playing poker. In any case, until next time, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.